Welcome, everybody. My name is Rami Khouri. I'm the director of the Issam Fares Institute at AUB, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here on behalf of the joint program that is now being inaugurated with this activity. And this is a joint program that is in the process of being launched between the Issam Fares Institute and the graduate program in urban design and urban planning and policy in the Department of Architecture and Graphic Design at AUB. Huwaid Al-Harithi is the chair of that department. She couldn't be with us because she's busy with review committees or judging committees. I'm not sure what they're called. But she's busy and couldn't make it, unfortunately, but we wanted to hold this event now, right at the end of this year. And we're very excited about this program because it captures the new phase of what we're trying to do at the Issam Fares Institute, which is partner with academic departments at AUB. We've done something similar with the Faculty of Agricultural and Food Sciences, a program on food security and food sectors in the Arab world. We've done it with the Institute of Behavioral Research, with the program on Palestinian camps in the region to do research and policy. And this is the third one now where we're doing it with the Department of Architecture and Graphic Design. And we hope that this will continue with other programs around the university. The issue of urbanism in the Arab world, or in the Arab region, is one of the compelling issues of our times. In the last 6 weeks, I've been to Cairo, Amman, Dubai, Tehran, Isfahan, and Beirut. And when you physically see those cities around the region and see the variety of things going on in those cities, you understand the critical importance of coming to grips with the realities of our urban patterns and urban trajectories in the Arab world or the region as a whole in a way that really hasn't been done to date in terms of an integrated, honest, research-based analysis and understanding of the urban fabric and all of its implications, environmental, sociological, economic, political, religious, gender, social, psychological, military. There's so many dimensions of urbanism, and this is an urban region. It's actually more of a peri-urban region in many places, where the urban core has now been surrounded by this massive belt of middle and lower income citizens, most of whom have been relegated. Basically, their citizenship has been, I believe, and this is my own personal comment, that most of the citizens of the cities of the Arab region have been turned into mere consumers, and the concept of citizenship has been pretty much taken away from them. And this leads to huge new dynamics in our region that need to be studied. And this is one of the things we hope to do, to look at the totality of urban life, the people, the land, the buildings, the economics, the political relationships, every aspect of the urban experience, and to do this in a manner that allows a consortium of, a loose consortium of individual scholars and institutions in the Arab world and further afield in places like Harvard and MIT and Berkeley and other places in London and all over the Arab world, in Dubai and Cairo and Amman and Damascus. We're bringing together a group of scholars and institutions who together will address these issues on a regional level. So it's really our great pleasure to be part of this process in partnership with the Department of Architecture and Graphic Design, and we will be making announcements about our program as we define it and develop it in the days ahead. This activity today is a particularly compelling one because of the subject matter. Fadi Shayya has worked with many colleagues to put together this book about Horsh Beirut, and I just want to quickly mention that the participants, Fadi will speak about the book. We'll have comments by Anbara Abu Ayyash from the Heinrich Böll Foundation, Dr. Samir Kalaf from the Sociology Department, Jala Makhzoumi from the Landscape Design, and George Arbid from architecture. They will all speak in turn. And I wanted particularly to thank my colleague Lana Salman, who has done much of the work to set this up and get it going. And she's a graduate student in the Department of Architecture and Graphic Design and getting a master's, and also coordinates the public policy and research program at the Issam Fares Institute. So thank you, Lana. Thank you all for being with us. We will keep you posted about what we're doing in this new program, and would welcome any suggestions, ideas you have about things that you think would be interesting for us to study related to urbanism in the Arab region. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Lana.
Welcome. Thank you all for coming. I'll be your moderator for the evening. So I would like to invite Fadi Shayya first to present the book and the project. I will also be sitting in front of the panelists to remind you about your time so that we keep enough time for questions and answers, which is the most interesting part usually of these debates. Thanks.
Good evening. Before I start reading, I just say that many times I dwell into the details, so I decided to write a paper. And at the same time, this is my first, let's say, public lecture, so I hope I deliver it well. I want to thank the Issam Fares Institute for Public Policy and International Affairs, the Department of Architecture and Design, and the American University of Beirut for providing the opportunity and platform to share with you the work on Beirut's park and public space at the edge of the city. The book is an edited volume of essays, personal experiences, artists' visuals, and collected information that require quite some time to present. However, and in the short time that I have today, I will take you through the reason, motivation, and process of producing this work, and through the significance I believe is attached to such an undertaking. So, to start with the problem that this book tackles. What is the contemporary urban state of Beirut today? Dense urban fabric, yet busy cultural production, traffic jams, yet animated pedestrian life, sharp sociopolitical divisions, yet room for diverse convictions, less green open space, yet vibrant cafe culture, you name it, and you think of it and you name it. Beirut is always busy, hectic, and fluctuating. It is never stable, it is always emerging, and so is its public space. All of you know some of these views maybe. This is from AUB. Then we have Hamra, we have buildings, we have streets, we have cars, we have less green space, we have the downtown and all the urbanizing coast. We have practices of citizenship, of exclusion, you name it, and you think of it, and you name it. So my first physical encounter with Beirut's park, Horsh Al-Sanawbar, dates back to late 2005 during an urban planning workshop here at AUB. During my fieldwork, I clearly remember walking by the park on the outer sidewalk and developing a curiosity to see what was inside. The first observation to catch my attention was the internal fence between what I came to call the open section and the closed section of the park. With a camera and an excuse for photographing flowers, I went inside the closed section only to get captivated by the scale and serenity of the green space. For a while, I almost felt outside of Beirut, out of the city that I know. These are images from inside the closed park today, or what we commonly know as Horsh Al-Sanawbar. As you can see, these are inaccessible to people except for a few which I will talk about who can get a permit from Beirut's administrator. So as you can see that not only that there are no people in the photographs, but these are rare sights that we see in Beirut every day in a dense city like Beirut. According to historical and travelers' accounts, the creation of the pine woods dates back to Emir Fakhreddin's second man over 350 years ago. But the modern history of the park starts in 1982, when it was firebombed by the Israeli Air Force, which claimed the Palestinian military groups sought shelter under the pine trees. After the end of the Civil War, a competition for a peace park was organized in the early 90s by the Council for Development and Reconstruction, and the
EUARIF, which is the Institut d'Aménagement, d'Urbanisme de la Région de Île-de-France. Excuse my quirky French. So it was organized by the CDR and the EUARIF, and it was funded by the Conseil Régional de Île-de-France. The design team of Jacques Gare, French, and Pierre Namé, Lebanese, won the competition, and the redesign was completed and officially handed over to the municipality of Beirut in June 1995. Aside from the municipality's financial contribution, the total financial contribution of the French partner amounted to 1.5 million euros in 1998. So this is the historical woods when it was Horsh Al-Sanawbar, actually, and I differentiate between Horsh Al-Sanawbar and Beirut's park. It still carries the name, but today it's a park, while then it was still woods. And this is the old Beirut Saida Road, which takes you to what we know today as the southern suburbs. This is the brochure of the municipality, and you can see the logos of the partners. And you can see the motto, Horsh Al-Sanawbar fi qalb Beirut al-Ghad, something that's always represents promised utopias in cities. And up there you can see the old fence of the park, which dates back to the 60s. And on top of the fence, this is a sample installed by the contractor so that the municipality may approve it. It has spears and barbed wire. So if they approve it, they will make the entire park like that, so people won't trespass the fence. And here you can see this is, it's not there anymore, actually. This dates back to 2005. It's just a piece of cardboard, which is materially informal as the regulation that it states. And it says that you cannot enter the park except with a permission from the municipality or the administrator. Since then, the park is sealed off from the lives of many Beiruti residents and visitors, with numerous justifications for their exclusion. According to the municipality of Beirut, the official reason for park closure is safeguarding the newly planted vegetation from harm until it matures, based on the premise that park visitors harm the vegetation and create litter. According to the CDR, the current institutional capacity of the municipality falls behind in the management and maintenance of such a large-scale infrastructure. So we have different reasons why the park is closed. In brief, the municipality decided to divide the park into two parts, using a fence of wire mesh and barbed wire. One part was open to the public in January 1999, and another part that is still closed and accessed via special permission from the administrator of Beirut. The park is the largest green open space in the municipal and metro Beirut areas. It is a 330,000 square meters triangular open space found in lot 1925 at the southern boundary of municipal Beirut. The park lies along the axis of the old airport road amidst the areas of Mazra, Tariq Jdidi, As Sabra, Ghbayri, Shiyah, Furn al-Shibak, and Badaru, and it is separated from Ras al-Naba by the horse race course. So this is Beirut. This is actually part of Metro Beirut with the near or direct suburbs. This is the park that we are talking about. The area next to it is the horse race track, as you all know it, or the hippodrome, Sabah al-Khil. And this is almost the area of municipal Beirut. So this is municipal Beirut, and these are here all Ghbayri, Shiyah, Furn al-Shibak, Brish Hamoud, etc. So you can see that we start with the premise that the park has an edge condition between city and suburb and between different administrative jurisdictions. We will later come to other issues of being at the edge. Also here you can see this is the park in 1956. The dark area is the dense pine trees that you have, that we used to have. And you can also see there are traces of the old roads, the one that I showed in the postcard at the beginning of the presentation. And then this is the park. You can see it's empty. This is because this photograph, earlier photograph, was taken in the early 90s because, as I mentioned before, after it was burnt and bombed by the Israeli jet fighters. And this is the new park that we have with a new design, with the circle and the three entrances. And it's still brown because the green isn't still there because the trees are still growing as the municipality uses this excuse. This is the part of the park, which is the open. It constitutes about 15 to 20%, including the parking areas and the sidewalks. It's toward the As side. And this is, as I have showed earlier in the photographs, this is part of the closed park, which is about 80% of the entire area. So you can still see these are the old trees that survived. Maybe they age like over 100 years old, and these are very young maturing trees. My point of reference is the city. I have passion and commitment to urban spatial change, and I believe that there is need to add layers of advocacy and activism to the work of professionals, to develop new forms of urban citizenship, to promote cross-cultural exchange, and to employ interdisciplinary methods of thinking. In Beirut, as in urban agglomerations across the globe, public space constitutes an interactive landscape of convergence and/or conflict. Nevertheless, public space as part of spatial planning is neither a priority for nor an integral component of the agenda of public policy or spatial design at the Lebanese municipal and national levels. On the rare occasions where it is included in the agenda, public space is dealt with as a product of urban design that is restricted to formal aesthetics and affected by the availability of resources and institutional capacity. In a country where confessional politics and hegemonic influences, domestic and foreign, prevail, and a dragging, dire social agenda and economy stagger in parallel, the appeal of spatial justice as part of a modern citizenship's fundamental components becomes secondary or tertiary. The closure of this huge public space is a deviation from the norm of modern states and societies. And still, people accepting this closure willingly or unwillingly enact an atypical acceptance of what is not right, not constitutional, and not just. People continue to live this reality as they have done with other severe and more pressing realities, and this has become part of their discourse of how things work in Lebanon. The public space of Beirut's park lies at the edge of modernity, politics, social convention, conflict, power, class, and confessionalism. The park itself is at the edge of history, memory, nature, and design, and the location is actually at the geographic edge of city and suburb. Therein lies the book's title, At the Edge of the City. But how can one account for transitioning, at least analytically, transitioning a public space from being at the edge of the city into becoming at the center of daily social practice? How can one suggest an alternative discourse to the constant treatment of public space as a dichotomy of total freedom or absolute control? You can see here, this is a diagram that we constructed from several historical maps. You can see it's since 1696 until 1996, 300 years. The area of Horsh Al-Sanawbar, how it is decreasing because of either urbanization around the green area or because of cutting parts of it to make the horse race track or the cemeteries or different areas. And today we have only this area. So this is also kind of a reflection of the evolution of the city, which is unfortunately an undesirable evolution, but it is what happened. In the States, in the late 1800s, people like Frederick Law Olmsted, they had a vision that in 100 or 200 years, we will be, the areas will be heavily urbanized. So they devised policies to protect areas and anticipating the urbanization that will happen, which, of course, here we don't have it because, as usual, we always import these policies or these practices after a while, and sometimes it's a bit too late. You can see here, this is a diagram representing almost all of the open spaces, green and non-green, in Beirut. Of course, these are not, they do not include like sidewalks and roads, but they include what the municipality defines as plaza or garden or park. In this case, you have them here and you have the areas. You can see that the park constitutes about 72%. It's a huge percentage. And here, this 100%, this is the park. All of this circle is the park. So 66% of the park is closed today, which is this part here. And then you have lesser percentages, which are the sidewalks, the courts, the parking area. And then you will have the open section, which the area that I showed in the photographs earlier. This constitutes about 15 to 17% of the entire area of the park. And as you can see, maybe it's not clear to you here, but the words at the tip of at the circumference of the circle, you can see that all the practices, they gather in the open section and the parking, while lesser practices, but different practices actually, are found in the closed section. The product, the book, and advocacy. Despite this prevailing reality, I believe we need to convey and influence an alternative discourse on public space. For public space acquires its key significance because it constitutes the institutional intersection and spatial interface between governing and governed, policy directives and institutional competence, and state and citizen. At the edge of the city is a contemporary critique of urban governance and spatial production in Beirut. It aspires to chart an alternative discourse from that which produces the current exclusion through exploring issues of advocacy and politics, providing a platform for citizens to contest the existing governance and advocating a well-informed public space policy agenda. At the edge of the city assimilates many, although not all, layers of analysis and readings of Beirut's park, ranging from practices, culture, economics, gender, social groups, memory, meaning, environment, nature, and design, to others. About 35 professionals, journalists, artists, and activists contribute content to this book, half of whom are early career professionals. The texts and visuals include different senses and modalities of how public space could be addressed, reaching from sensory perceptions to addressing public memories and social practices, and even to fictive imaginations. The book is an edited volume structured into 3 main parts. The first documents the intricate urban context, the second analyzes heterotopias of space, and the third presents citizens' interactions. In an intricate urban context, the authors discuss the history of the park and evolving meanings of public space. From pine woods in the 17th century to a park in the 20th century, Horsh Al-Sanawbar is established within Beiruti memory and continues to be part of its imagination. Due to its current closure, people continue to remember, practice, and appropriate the public space of the city, and spatial coexistence in Beirut becomes synonymous with political and cultural coexistence. In Heterotopias of Park and City, the authors investigate the spatial connections between Beirut and its park through the lenses of modernity, spatial justice, confessional divisions, exclusion, gender equality, and environmental ethics. The place, its rehabilitation, and its closure constitute experimental fields for both authorities and citizens of Beirut to try to manifest recovery from the civil war and re-inhabit amidst modernity. The park and the city seem at odds, and Foucault's notion of heterotopia dominates all utopian imaginations of a place that is supposed to bring people together. This is an infographic diagram created by Francois Eid for the book. It shows visually and like with evidence based on electoral lists the different sects or confessional groups surrounding the park. You can see that we have the yellow, we have the Shiite groups, the blue, we have the Sunni groups, and the different purple are the different Christian groups, and the orange, more to the north, is the Armenian group. This condition actually triggered the French sponsoring of the park. They said that, okay, great, we have a park which is along the old division of the city, into west and into east and west, and this could be a perfect opportunity to bring people together. And so they say, let's fund the park in that sense. But definitely people coming out of a civil war and even going into more strife, as it seems, do not actually comply with this vision of the French, and that was transmitted to the municipality. In Transient Citizenship, Transient Public Space, which is the 3rd chapter of the book, the authors inscribe citizens' understandings of ownership of public space and their consequent practices and experiences of advocacy and activism to reclaim their domain. Enacting citizenship through public space is questioned as an imported political and cultural construct against practices of claiming and reclaiming collective ownership. Thus, when a group of citizens decide to mobilize to reclaim the spatial design, green space, or picnic space of the park, their citizenship is enacted. However, whether their citizenship and its enactment, or public space and its domain is transient, remains a central controversy in the context of the confused meanings of Beirut. this is part of the park. These are the athletic courts. And you can see that despite, I mean, these fences are there for protection, and it's just the minimum. It's just a flat area with asphalt, and people could just go in and practice sports or whatever. So they don't need more than that. They don't need a fancy place in that sense. This is another photograph. This is actually a family having a picnic in the parking of the park, because the park behind them, this is the open section of the park. But even in the open section, people are not allowed to have picnics, because, as I said before, they are only perceived to create litter. So these people do not care about the green in that sense. They just sit on the sidewalk, have their barbecue, and definitely, because this is a feasible place of a feasible public space for them to go maybe on a Saturday or Sunday afternoon. So, in conclusion, setting a discourse is not an easy task. The objectives and aspirations of setting a discourse in this book are rooted in the attempt itself to reimagine, reinvent, and re-inhabit the public space of Horsh Al-Sanawbar as part of the process of recovery. Recovery in terms of Horsh Al-Sanawbar is integral to getting the public back to the public space, which leads to re-inhabiting. In other words, re-inhabiting Horsh Al-Sanawbar implies that governing authorities and citizens utilize and respect the environmental, social, cultural, and historical context of the park through governance and practice respectively. This is a new opportunity for an alternative discursive formation. All articles aim to shape an understanding of continuously evolving meanings of public space in Beirut, opening up the discussion and raising questions and challenging the status quo as well as the social imagination of public space itself. In the end, I just want to thank again AUB and the IFI Department of Architecture for hosting us. And I want to thank the Heinrich Böll Foundation, which hopefully Ambara will just give a speech about why did they sponsor the book. And the publisher, which is actually myself and my colleagues who worked on this publication. And I may not have the time, but I hope that you can go to the book blog or see the blog, and also to give just credit to all the authors who contributed content to this book. I thank all the contributors and supporters of At the Edge of the City for their enthusiasm and input. And I thank our colleagues, friends, and families for being there when needed. Thank you, and I will end with Sumaya Smaha's painting, which is also included in the book. And of course, it happened that it talks about pine trees, so we thought that it is related somehow to all the discourse on Lebanon and nostalgia and lost space. Thank you.
I would like, thank you, Fadi. I would like to invite Anbar Al-Ayash from Heinrich Böll just to say a few words about their funding of the book, please.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anbar Abu Ayash. I represent tonight the Heinrich Böll Foundation. Thank you to AUB and Issam Fares Institute for providing this platform. I will be very brief, especially since Fadi has already started with going into the content, and we were invited just to say a few words on why we thought that funding of this book was important. I would also like to use the opportunity to introduce you to the Heinrich Böll Foundation. We are a German foundation. We're associated with the German Green Party, Green Political Party, and we were established in the course of the worldwide Green Political Movement. Although associated to this Green Political Party, yet we are legally autonomous and intellectually open as a foundation. In Lebanon, we have four main program components, one of which is sustainable development and ecological justice. So under this, we summarize projects that relate to renewable energies, as well as the right to a clean environment, the right to access to clean resources, and also within this regard, also to green spaces. One of our approaches is, or better to say, in the implementation of all our projects, we follow approaches that would promote participation of citizens or inhabitants of societies, of cities, in political decision-making, and also strengthening their ability in claiming political and civil rights and cultural rights, as well as of course, social and economic rights. Basically, we design our programs based on the needs as partners and society actors communicate them to us. So when Fadi Shayya came to us in 2008, I think it was, with a proposal to compile a number of contributions to form a book that is called At the Edge of the City, we thought that the theme of the book was very interesting because, as we understood, the issues discussed in the book do not receive the attention they deserve in the Lebanese society, nor are they on a level on the public agenda as they should be. Eventually, with this theme, as we understood it, investigates into the relationship between the city and the people living in the city, and specifically the public space and their interaction with it. Horsh Al-Sanawbar presents itself as an example for such an investigation because of its history, with which you're probably more familiar than I am, and with the systematic or with the still ongoing exclusion of people of the city and denial of access to this park. So basically, to use Fadi's words, we found it very interesting to look into the question of how can such a public space that seems to be forgotten, that is not within the realm of public interest anymore, how can such a space be transformed into, I think I'm going to use your words, into a center of daily social practice. I think that the contributions use different angles to address this question. What we found further interesting, and why we thought it is important to fund, is that we understood that the book would not be a book that would present just a number of contributions and researches, but we hope that this book would also be part or serve the purpose of advocacy. Advocacy for a number of different actors within society. So with this in mind, we hope that this book, for all those who work on reclaiming the right to the park and the right to the city, may benefit of it, and that it might be of informative value. Thank you, and thank you for having us, and thank you for the book and everyone who worked on it.
Thank you, Anbar. I would like to invite all three panelists, Dr. Samir Kalaf, Dr. Jala Makhzoumi, and Dr. Arbid, along with Fadi, to please take a seat. And we will go through the comments. So we will start with Professor Makhzoumi, then Dr. Kalaf, then Dr. Arbid.
On? Yeah. My voice is on, definitely. Okay. Now? Yes, okay. I was hoping that Samir would start and I would follow, but it's fine. Okay, I would like to start by recalling a book, The Making of the English Landscape by G.W. Hoskins, which I think a lot of you are familiar with, where Hoskins popularizes the use of the word palimpsest. And he, the word as defined by Britannica Online is manuscripts or roll or codex where text is erased or partly erased underneath an apparent additional text. In other words, it is something that is layered with bits and patches showing from past and coming together in a peculiar sort of way. Landscapes, of course, are palimpsests, and so is the Horsh, and this is what I will focus on. I believe that the collection of articles presented in Fadi's edited volume bring this concept to life, mainly looking at the layering in time as in space of this specific space, which is the Horsh itself. It brings the layers together, both tangible layers, which is the physical landscape and the bits of green that remain, but also perceptual layers, memories, personal, individual, recollections, imagery, and all of this comes alive very much in this layered fashion. And I feel the book has that quality about it, which is intentionally, I think, because of the way it is structured. Also intentionally because of the wide background of contributors. Gladly, it is not just by architects and designers, but you have poets, as Fadi explained, and graphic artists and anthropologists, all contributing their different views. And I feel this is very important for us to arrive at a better understanding of a contextualized meaning of the word landscape, which we use a lot. But when we use, we borrow a Western conception that dates a little more than the Horsh itself, to 400 years, and is rooted in Northern European culture. What is landscape to us? What does it mean? This has been something I have looked at and tried to sort out for the last 25 years with no apparent answer. But something I do know is that it is very necessary to have a collection of different disciplines coming together and looking at our understandings, our histories, and societal interpretations and perceptions to be able to collectively arrive at an understanding of landscape. The other issue I would like to talk about is the issue of public urban space, which is a recurring theme in the book. And perhaps one of the better, more clear elaborations on this is Rana and Rouse's reference to Joseph Salomon's PhD thesis, where he looks at different interpretations and schools of thinking of urban public space in Beirut. Within this context of urban space, I would like to focus on city parks. Again, because they are landscapes, and that is my interest. I think with the exception of Sanaya, most city parks were established in the 60s and the 50s as a way to modernize cities in our part of the world, whether in Damascus or in Beirut or in Baghdad. And so this is how they came to be. Recently, I had a graduate course where students went around asking different neighborhoods in Beirut what they thought of, what their perception of city parks in their vicinity. And it was a little daunting what they came up with. And there is allusion in some of the chapters to that. People thought that parks were a place where illicit ongoings happened. It was at best, if I may use the Lebanese word, a place for Za'ran. And when I compared my notes with Baghdad, again, Park al-Sa'doun, which was established around the same time Beiruti parks were established, again there, my perception of that park is of the Iraqi equivalent of Za'ran, Sarsariya. So really, youth going there to congregate, maybe a girl and a boy or whatever. So this is really something that has to be, it was something to look at really, and it was a wake-up call. Still, we find that city parks or parks are advocated or created even in villages in Lebanon. And the same perception, it is still out of context even there. I recollect parks in Iblis Sa'i, and when I asked one of the residents, do you go to those two parks that were established there? And the answer is, they will think me mad, if I go to the park. And still parks are being created. So what is this relationship with park? So to come back to the subject of Horsh, Horsh is not a city park, and it is not a Horsh either. If we try to look at a continuum, if we imagine a continuum with forest at one end and a city park at the other, the Horsh is more or less in the middle. It is not a natural landscape, it is naturalized, and it is not a public, it is public and yet not public like Corniche or like other public spaces. However, value lies specifically in this uniqueness of this feature, both tangible and intangible social perception of the Horsh make it an amazing case study for us to explore what is an open landscape, a green landscape, a park, a city park in a city. And really, this is really one of the key values. On this note, I beg to differ with Fadi in distinguishing between city park, Horsh. I would retain the name Horsh, not only for romantic reasons, but also because of the cultural continuity and associations that come with the word Horsh and Horsh Beirut specifically. So, to conclude, I would like to commend Fadi and all the contributors for a valuable welcome to a library on public spaces and public landscape, which is greatly lacking in our part. And I hope that it will be the beginning of many more publications, both by Fadi, but also by the contributors themselves. Hopefully they would have acquired a taste for the subject and that they will continue to explore it.
Because of my gray hair, white hair, I can afford to play the devil's advocate a bit. Because many of the people involved in producing this book almost remind me of how I had started my career, very exuberant, almost very, very immodest. And luckily, I had a professor who very early in my career, he told me, look, Samir, you're better than what you have produced. And he had, if I had not listened to him, I would have probably been, put myself in a little box and continued to do the things that I felt. So my message to Fadi and the rest of this group is that you have produced a commendable piece of work, but you are much better than what you have produced. And let me tell you why. And I say it in the spirit of, and I talked with George about this, in the spirit of open criticism, and this is how we all grow. Because I say it not to disparage the work, but I say it so that we can learn from I mean, and this is what really Lebanon suffers from. We have become too exuberant in our intentions. In fact, I was put off by Fadi's opening sentence. He was saying, this laborious, painstaking work of 1 year. You know, Batatu spent 17 years working on Iraq, and he never said, I had spent laborious, painstaking work. So 1 year is not too much. It's a very good beginning. But let me begin by saying and very sparingly in the spirit of constructive, well-meaning criticism, that when I finished reading, and I spent the whole weekend looking at the book, I say, what did I read? And you tried to explain to us. I said, is this an academic piece of work that is trying to test hypotheses, premises, inferences about public sphere? Is this a, because you are responding to the Issam Fares and the Heinrich Böll's foundation, are you setting an agenda for research, or at least to produce certain premises that could be used to people who want to recover, who want to rehabilitate open space? Or are you producing a website, a blog? And I saw a combination of all of these modes. Hence, I was a bit confused. But I said, look, let me read it for what it's worth. And I found sometimes that it's a bit pretentious, and I mean this in a full meaning of the word. It's a bit immodest. Name calling. The young like to, spread names, Foucault, Habermas, whatever, and often narcissistic. And a bit self-indulgent, like you're writing a blog. See, Mom, what I'm doing. I saw the park, or so on. Speaking of the park, I saw the park on Saturday with Rosanna and other friend of ours. This was the garden festival, the festival of green, the spring festival. Yeah. You know what? There were over 800, close to 1,000 people. I did not see one veiled woman. Huh? And I kept saying, why, if, as you say, the Shiites or the Sunnis live very close to the area, why were the veiled women self-excluded? What has green become ideological? I can understand if in the park they had a dancing party, they had a striptease, they had whatever, that certain groups would feel excluded. Unless we address this question, and this is central to understanding why public spheres have failed in Lebanon, we will not be really doing justice to this notion. This is why I wish some of you had done your history, and reread what I had done with the Burj. The Burj began as a Midan. A Midan is a place which is not wilderness, nor is it home, but it attracted itinerant people who wanted to stay there and leave, which is very interesting. But while they were there, it is their place. The Midan all of a sudden began Saha. Sahat al-Sur, can it? And then all of a sudden, the Sahat al-Sur became a place du canon. The Prussians put the guns, the French came and restored the guns, and all of a sudden, this public sphere changed its identity. And then the Ottomans came, it became Hadiqat al-Hurriya, Hadiqat al-Hamidiyya, Hadiqat al-Istiqlal. And then, you know what the Ottomans did? Then it became Sahat al-Shuhada. Now, those 7, 8 transformations in the Burj, the identity of the Burj kept changing. Is it the rampart, the Burj, which has become the most stable identity? Or is it a Saha? Is it the garden? When they had the garden, the Muntaza, didn't last for a few weeks. And then the French and the Ottomans came, and they had to put a gated garden. can you have a gated public space, like what happened in the Sanaya and other places? If you have to gate, you speak of freedom and liberty, but if it is unlicensed, like what happened in Lebanon, as the people you interviewed, wasfu, bizitu, but basically the issue is, can you have a truly public sphere where people are 5 minutes? Okay, thank you for. But let me go on to.
Take 5 from me.
Okay. The second thing that bothered me about the work, and I'm very serious about this, and this happens among my young students, is that you are enamored by superstars. By the way, there's a fascinating new book on Edward Said, written by one of his students for 35 years, and he calls it The Charisma of Criticism. And the book is essentially arguing that when you become charismatic, nobody can teach you. Nobody can reach you. Nobody can hold you responsible for anything. So hence people talk Foucault, quote Said, talk Harvey, without ever having read Harvey or Foucault, and all of a sudden discursive formation became the icon of your work. But as a result, you became much too discursive. And in the sense, I said, look, can I extract one or major theme from your work? You picked the edge. But the edge is not a 4-letter word. Some of the most exciting things happen in history happen at the edge. But my argument that even if the edge has become the center, you are not going to protect the center from the abuse of all the things that have been mutilating public spheres in Lebanon. And I wish you had, again, reread my work on, Hashim Sarkis, others, on what happened to the Corniche, on what happened to other public spheres. Now, the other thing that also bothers me, sometimes you quote authors when they have said something banal. Like, for example, Fuad Asfour quotes Mario Endheim to tell us that you cannot escape an anthropologist's stance when you are facing other people, other places, other cultures. Wow. This is what we tell our students in 201, that whenever you go somewhere, do we need to go to whoever he is, Mario Endheim, but the serious exclusion, with the exception of Rana and Raos, who made a brief mention to Nabil Bayhum and May Davy, I can list a dozen of colleagues that I have learned much from, that nowhere exist. If the Germans are looking at the workshop here, at the bibliography, they say, where are the local scholars? How come Shawid Waihi? How come Hashim Sarkis? How come Asim Salam, Robert Saliba, Salim Nasser? Jad Tabet wrote a beautiful piece on the public sphere. How about Maha Yahya, Rashid Baidoun, Ghassan Haj? You brought him here several times to talk. Asif Bayat came here. Usama Qabbani, Muna Harb. I would list somehow. There is a blackout. Was this blackout intended, George? Have you not been telling your students? I mean, how come? Look, I am really embarrassed.
I can answer this one.
Yes. Look, the title of one of my books, and I'm proud of that, called Beirut Reclaimed. You're worried about recovery. And you know who inspired my book? My son, Ramzi. He was 9 years old at the time. We had left Lebanon, came back after 8-10 years, and we lived for the first 2 nights in Clemenceau. Ramzi woke up, he heard the rooster. He smelled the jasmine. He saw the bougainvillea. He said, my God, Beirut is going to be that enchanting. Ali Baba, yalla. We started walking towards Hamra. All of a sudden, this young boy who normally runs came to me, held my hand. He was sweating. Right then and there, I said, Ramzi was epitomizing the problem of Lebanon. There is fear, there is trauma, there is uncertainty, there is risk, but there is also landscape. There is also the enchanting beauty of the land and the green. So how do we use landscape? How do we use green to preempt fear, to preempt the trauma? And I discovered that when we took Ramzi to Byblos or to Faqra, he started dancing, he started singing. He became himself again because he was aligned with the nature that inspired him to be creative or so on. So unless we address this issue, we are nowhere going to scratch the surface of transforming the Horsh into a truly public sphere that will allow a public sphere. To me is very simple. It's a sphere that accommodates, celebrates differences without indifference to the other. Really. And this is what has Burj lately become. In my new book on Lebanon Adrift, I have a chapter on women in Lebanon who have become the most active agents of voluntarism and change. 100 yards away, where the Souq Al-Awadim used to be, the red light district, has become the Quartier d'Art. At the turn of the century, 220 women were selling their bodies to say who we are. Now we have 58 women who are selling art, who are selling all kinds of things that are bringing people who essentially find in this work an elevation into something else. But what I saw on Saturday is not very reassuring. Unless we address this issue, why certain groups feel excluded from certain public spaces. Unless we address this issue, I don't think we are going to transform the Horsh, whether it's at the edge or at the center, into the places that we are talking about. Thank you.
I think Fadi will answer better your critique, but I want to use something that you've said. Voice, okay. You said that we should celebrate differences, and I think we should start celebrating differences in publications as well. There is, I think, the academic world should accept other possibilities, and I think that if we look at this document as a scholarly work, it will not meet the expectations. But if you look at it as an activist, as an advocacy piece, as a piece that actually, and I say it in the foreword, that is exactly how we would like the Horsh to be, that is a place for all, then I think the critique would be answered by that. Exactly, I think it would be enough. I like how you started, because you said it's like a palimpsest, something that is somewhat over there and that could be recovered. And I start more or less the same way, actually. It's an interesting. I call it the Bermuda Triangle, the counter Bermuda Triangle, because the Bermuda Triangle is allegedly where, you know, planes disappear, right? And I hope that this triangle is the place where things will reappear. It's a counter Bermuda Triangle where things are there, and hopefully if they are given the chance to reappear again, they will. And I say they will from what I call in the preface or the foreword, incongruous simultaneities. There is, if people are given the chance to practice what Fadi called their, you know, daily normal life, which is totally different from what we are proposed in the city center. I was in the souks a few days ago, and with all due respect to the architecture of the place, I think it's a missed opportunity, right? You go there and you have these I would say, stupid sculptures. You know, the red one, and now we have stone ones that are on the sidewalk at the entrance. They are there to furnish the space, but there is no single bench. I mean, you're not supposed to sit there. It's not a public space. You just go there. But if you want some, you know, vague cultural background, you have the sculptures, but you're here to, you know, to buy and sell. And I hope that the Horsh would be some place that is a counter-example for these things. Now, I say that we have insights by the contributors that come from many disciplines, and what I wrote here is maybe also an answer to you, Samir. I say some, fortunately, coming from undisciplined individuals. In other words, they escape the disciplines of research. And therefore, perhaps with the naivete of their approach, the fact that they haven't read the names that you have proposed is legitimate. I mean, unless we've read all those, are we not allowed to have a position that is an advocacy one? That's a question that I give you back. Now, what I think is the most interesting thing in the Horsh and in this endeavor is that the Horsh lends itself to those projections, to those readings. And this is why it is an interesting place. And we are told that, you know, the Corniche is the place, is the only public space in Beirut. We are told that this is when, of course, all of you know the cliche, you have the short and you have the veil. And this is why I think it's not a problem if at the garden show there are no veils. I mean, I don't think it's a problem in itself. But in any case, in the Corniche, you have this cliche. But as Jumana Handour observes very well, it's a place of passage. It's not a place where people stay and sit. And I argue that we actually practice our urbanity more in villages. I mean, I can cite you know, hundreds of squares in villages, whether in front of religious buildings or even at, you know, large crossroads, where you do have this public life happening. And I argue that somebody has to do this research, because we constantly speak of public space in Beirut, but I think that most of the Lebanese, of course there are people who are from Beirut or other cities and who live there, but I think that most, I mean, I can speak of myself. In the weekends, I practice my urbanity in the Shuf. And we do have a square and we meet there and things are happening, right? So it has to do with the aborted modernism of Beirut. That's something we have to look into. And recently we had Rem Koolhaas, a world-renowned architect, who was invited to AUB, and he warned us against something that I thought was quite interesting, that he coined this way. He said, we have urbanization without urbanity. And I think this is a very interesting critique we could make of everything that has been done during Reconstruction, whether in what is called the Solidaire area or around it. So, and maybe we should give degrees in, you know, masters in urbanity, not in urban design or something of the sort. It would be very interesting to approach the whole field from that side. And I'm interested to know if there is a real call for these public spaces, or is it only, you know, with this group of advocacy people around Fadi and others? Is there a real need? I mean, I would like to hear the audience about this. And I think there are a few words that are interesting in the book. For example, Rana Andraus says that it is quarantined. It's a space that is quarantined. I like that because it is actually like this, right? It is fenced and it is kept over there until recovery. But recovery will not happen alone. I think something has to be done. And there is I mean, quoting Hashim Sarkis that you mentioned as well, he spoke of Bil-Burj as the postponed, al-Saha al-Mu'ajjala, he called it. I think that it's also a very good term for the park, for Horsh. It is postponed. Its opening is postponed, constantly postponed. And if I want to be more optimistic than this, I say it is waiting, right? It's a space that is waiting. And I think the publication is a very good starting point. But now I think action is needed. And I would like, I don't know if Fadi has already ideas or if the audience can give us some ideas. That is what to do next. Okay, now the publication is there is an advocacy, there is a call for something to happen. And of course, more scholarly researchers can do their own work on it, on the side. But I think what is mostly interesting for me at this point is how to work towards the opening of the full park. And that's the first question. And second, are there any ideas for programming the park so that it's not only, you know, a new vacuum or a public green space, but what is it that actually we would like to see happening there? And maybe we cannot program it fully, and it wouldn't be interesting to program it fully, but how can it be a catalyst of things to happen? That's a question I think the audience maybe can help us. Thank you.
I would like to open the floor for discussion if I find a wireless microphone. Zaki, can you please? We'll take a round of questions, give time to the panelists, and if there are more, we'll take more questions. So, please give your name and address your question to a specific speaker if you can, okay?
Hello, I'm Dalia Jawhari. Actually, I took the course with Dr. Jala. I'm doing my master's in ecosystem management, and I had the chance to visit one area of Beirut, which is Ashrafiyeh, and to do some research about the perception of public space. And it was really interesting to see like the people's opinion about public space, and like we had some questions asking them if they would like to have the park still there or they don't care about that, because we have like Siyufi, one of the important parks in the area. And also, like my colleagues in class, they had the chance to visit other areas like Mazra'a and the surrounding areas in Beirut. And it was interesting to see that most people, they don't really care about like the public space. And I think it's related to the idea of like, in Lebanon, the idea of public space is something new to us, like the park idea. It's something introduced, like most people talked about the old situation before the civil war, where they had Bura or something, which is something near house, where everybody met there. And the most important identity of space was the social aspect that a place makes. It's the idea that people can congregate and come together, and this was one of the important things that people cared about. It's something which combined different people with different identities with different levels, and this was important. And it was interesting to see that people were feeling pity that they lost that sense of social interaction, let's say, with different layers of society due to the civil war, because like everybody was emphasizing about the idea of how civil war changed everything. So my point, we had some discussions in class and about the idea, is it good to keep public space, or like, would be people interested about keeping public space or not? And for Horsh Beirut, since it's one of the biggest maybe parks in comparison to others, the issue of management was one of the things which people tackled. Like they were saying, in Horsh Beirut, many problems take place, and usually many fights, and sometimes the issue of cleanliness, like if like we allow people to go there and it's a big area, so maybe we'll have the issue of management and cleanliness and such issues. So my point is that I want to address the question for Fadi. After like you had the chance to go there and be on the ground, what do you think like would be a good idea to, do you think that like the area which is closed should be open for everyone? And I mean, how can we deal with this aspect? Thank you.
Yeah, Leon Television. My question is to Fadi. Basically, when we analyze a public space as a geographical designed space or man-made space, basically there are three ways. I mean, first one is, one of the three questions is, how was it designed? The second question is, how is it regulated by public authorities? And the third question is how it is really used and appropriated. You covered the second question, which is, and we know exactly what are how the public authorities are really regulating the use of the space by restricting the accessibility to the space. You covered the third point, which is the various uses and practices of the public space. But the first question, which is, how was it designed? I mean, what are the values which were behind the concept of the space? We, as a community of designers, we project our values and the values of society, or the values of the ruling authority design criteria, and usually these criteria are induce behavior, they restrict behavior, so they are part of the usage. So the three main entry to the analysis are intertwined, and this may be, have you ever had the chance, this is my question, to really see the people who were behind the design, the concept, what were their intentions, what are the design features, and maybe this will a little bit explain the other two aspects about the regulation and about the use and the exclusion or inclusion of the space. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bushra Itani. I'm newly elected in the Municipality Council of Beirut. So I'm happy to be with you this afternoon. And I just want to transfer the intention of the new council to cooperate with all the parties that are interested in Horsh Beirut specifically, because we have the intention to reopen this place for public, but we need to cooperate with all the people who have some programming, as you said, Doctor. The Horsh needs programming actually, and we still don't have any idea about the how this programming will be. So we are really happy to cooperate with you. Thank you.
Abdurrahman Saghir, former professor of agriculture at AUB. Well, I'm glad that one of the newly elected members is here. I had in mind really to meet with Dr. Hamad, because I think that Horsh Beirut should be open to the public. I mean, the idea that we are closing it, either waiting for the pine trees to grow, which may take 30 to 40 years, or to inhibit people from dirtying the place, I think we are assuming too much. There are certain regulations which could be placed, like opening the pathways, putting little fences to prevent people from trespassing to other areas, putting certain time for visits, putting some lights, some guards, and I think this place should be open to the Beiruti public. I'm a Beiruti, and I like to be there. Similarly, the park, the Saba Al Khail Park, I was visiting the garden show, and I wonder why we shouldn't allow people to make use of this place. Thank you.
My name is Gerigba Serov. I'm teaching at the Faculty of Architecture. Fadi paid me visits during his research. I think it's a beautiful research. But I'll add, it's a bit too scholar. I'm practically, in practice, I'm an architect and also a planner, a town planner. I'm interested more and more in landscapes and nature, because it is so much disappearing in Lebanon. First of all, I like very much the maps you did, and I think the most significant map for me, which I knew about, is this map of the divisions of the communities or religions. If I can just make a quick comment, I think Sanaya Garden works very well, because it deals with homogeneous people. The other garden in Syufi is also working very well, because, again, it is dealing with a community. Now, Horsh Tabit is surrounded by Shia and Sunni communities, a little bit of the Christian communities. It is a large space. It can work properly, like Sanaya and Saifi, but it needs, as you, Professor mentioned, it needs a lot of control and management. But I would not like to elaborate on that. I think this will happen sometime. What I want to point out is that my feeling is that we are not to anymore, because of the expansion of urbanism or house or building all around. I don't believe that we are talking about cities anymore. We will be talking about the whole Lebanon as one city, And this, as George said, in villages, it is properly dealt with. I mean, the public spaces are okay. Another thing I want to say is that this, the concept of public garden or public parks is completely, I think it's completely disturbed by the transport, the movement of people, the movement by cars. Cars circulation has transformed city lives completely. You can, of course, limit the use of cars and hope for city gardens and so on, but it's a main factor. I mean, movement of the people, no matter how they do it, in cars, mostly in cars. So the question of parks, I think, should be more linear in any perspective you see. The linearity of the corniche is a benefit for everyone. It's both a linearity for vehicles as for pedestrians. So this question of linearity in the planning of parks should be approached, dealt with. If you look at Paris, which I'm sorry to say has all the examples, the best examples of public spaces, but the most characteristic or best part of public space in Paris are the streets or the corniches. Because they are linear and because you don't sit really, you circulate. And the width of the streets, I say it as a planner, the width of the street are extremely important. One street has a narrow street has a completely different mode of use than a large street or a corniche, or this can be easily observed. So if you cannot do much with implementing parks in Lebanon and even making this park function, I think it would be very difficult. And I just would like to mention that it is not at the edge of the city. It's at the edge of the municipal limits of the city. It's in the center of the city, absolute center of the city, but not in the center of all communities. That's the difference. It's a large park for definite communities. Now, we could have problems with Shiites and Sunnis. I don't think that is it will end up by being social differences that will set the pattern. Now, if you want a little anecdote, I know that the Sufi garden is recanted by Shia young people because they can go with girls and boys there without any problem. It's not the case at all at Sanaya. So as you can see, it's very, very related to communities. My question is whether all of you on the board here, whether you still believe in the old-fashioned parks or city garden patterns and layouts. That's it.
I'm Suzy Maddah from Nahnu NGO, and I would like to answer a question about whether an action should be taken or whether someone is preparing for such an action. We are preparing for a project, and it is not only a campaign to open this park. We are willing to contact with people interested and, of course, with researchers and the municipality to prepare a program once our project is ready. But it is not just a campaign to open. It is it consists of many steps to prepare young people to be ready to act and to communicate and also to spread awareness about environment, about green spaces, and about open spaces, and preparing activities inside Horsh Beirut, including music, theater, and other things. So once the project is ready, we would like to network with everyone. Thank you.
So I will let the panel answer questions, and then we'll take a second round if everybody still has the energy to go the second round.
I'll try not to take so much time, although you've raised very important issues. I mean, professors on the panel and many people in the audience. First, I'd like to say that this book, it holds, you know, the ground to kind of be for it or against it, but that's not actually, although I tend to agree with the Professor Kalaf that although I am still young and maybe pretentious, but I know that, and I know that sometimes we do that, and but this is our nature, and maybe we notice this after we do it. So I'm not gonna be apologetic about it, but definitely I'm gonna try to learn and to be better in that sense. Again, I will say something about the book. I mentioned in my presentation that it has so much layers and it has so much information, and it's really unfair to present it. We at least need like 2 hours just of presentation just to go into like what each author did. So I hope that you have the chance to read the book and to look closely at each contribution, because they're really different. They come from different backgrounds, with different discourses, with different attitudes even, and definitely with different content. So again, I'm not gonna go into the details about the part, but I'm gonna try maybe quickly answer some of the questions, hopefully to elaborate on this. Just to respond quickly to the panelists first, I think what Professor Makhzoumi said about the concept of landscape, I personally, my thesis was about master plans in Lebanon here at the urban design program at AUB. And it was supervised, actually, one of the supervisors was Dr. Makhzoumi. And I think that I chose, at that time, I asked Dr. Makhzoumi to be on the committee because I felt that I also come from Sawfar, which is a mountainous town in Lebanon, and I felt that I had this connection in me, in my practice, in my thinking between you know, nature and city, and trying to understand urbanity as kind of a transition, or in that sense, between different spaces and different built and natural environments. So this book definitely has a layer of landscape in it, and this layer, again, and according to what Professor Makhzoumi said, this book, the layers are not explainable sometimes, but they're just there. There's so much layers that sometimes you feel like it's really crazy to kind of link them together. As to what Professor Kalaf said, I think about critiquing the form or the style of the book, or even the undertaking itself. Yes, it's not like a scholarly undertaking, and it didn't happen at university. I'm not defending it. I'm just being fair to the book here. It's just that I felt that, and I think this is part of enacting one's citizenship. I felt that there's something that needs to be done. I wasn't satisfied. I mean, I did the research which got 2 awards, one at university and another one outside. But I wasn't like really satisfied with this. I thought that we should do something. We should enact our citizenship
and each one has his or her own way to enact this citizenship. So I thought making a book, I don't believe, personally I don't believe in what some NGOs, with all due respect to the work of NGOs, I don't believe in like just going and holding protests there until we open the park. And I don't believe actually that opening the park is a very simple thing, because there are so many layers of complication to the war, post-war, etc., modernity, post-modernity. But what we can do is we can express this and we can document it in a document where now I'm actually glad and proud that many people who are like working on public space, specifically like artists and activists who do not usually go, because it's just the way they do things, they do not go into academic references. They are actually stumbling upon this book, and they're getting to learn new layers and to add to it, and they're just calling and saying, okay, let's meet and let's discuss. We have new projects for other things, we have different things to do. But so this is kind of what I hope this book would do, and I'm glad that I can see it is doing this under the umbrella of advocacy and activism. Just one small note about, just to get a bit maybe academic here, about the comparison with Burj and with also the garden show and the horse race. The garden show doesn't happen in Horsh. I think you all know that. It happens in the horse race track, the hippodrome. Well, both of these spaces are heavily controlled spaces, and I'm not against control of space, because I believe that good governance, a term that is heavily promoted by the World Bank, but good governance asks the municipality to perform well, like to provide maintenance, to provide security, also as one of the audience here suggested, but we don't have that. And the municipality has, I don't know what you call that, you call it a discourse, you call it a rhetoric, you call it a strategy that they do not want to hire. You will see all that in the book. I've interviewed the previous mayor of the municipality, and I've interviewed like a couple of board members, and some had like reactions to this situation, and some just confirmed the situation, which like we don't want to hire now new guards or whatever, or like we're in the process of preparing a new generation of guards, which has been going like this process has been going on like for 10 years, and maybe it will go for another 10 years. So yes, I am pro controlling this space, because this is not a free space for freedom, for absolute freedom. At the end of the day, you have legal frameworks, you have social frameworks that these practices happen within. As for the things that the book document, like the people sitting in the parking or the people trespassing the fence, that is also another layer of this book, which is the appropriation of space. Because we're not only calling to open the park. At one point in time, this book is celebrating how people kind of negotiate these boundaries and negotiate these strategies and actually create this public space, which is more free than just opening the park and letting people in to have a picnic. So again, to go back to Dr. Arbid's notes about what next, this book started as first as a documentary phase, and all the contributors, they weren't identified at the beginning. It was an evolutionary process where even like just one very quick anecdote, I even ran into some ladies who call themselves the Feminist Collective, and they were like distributing brochures on the occasion of the International Women's Day. And I told them, like, why would you keep doing this thing? That do you think that this like brings on any kind of change or advancement? Or they said no, but we're just doing it because maybe it raises awareness or so. And I thought like, hey ladies, why don't you come and write about like women's conditions and relations to space in Beirut through the park. And actually that is what they did, and you may find it interesting or not. That would be your personal opinion, but it just included itself the issue of gender in that sense, without going into scholarly, but as Professor Arbid said, with just being anybody is has the legitimacy to give his or her opinion about these issues. So just quickly about the, just very quickly about some of the audience's remarks. I think the what Dalia said about how people use spaces, I mean, not like designated parks. This is, I think, what we tried to say in the beginning, and this goes, it's a long issue here, but maybe it goes into, you know, colonial, post-colonial, imported, modern, post-modern influenced by the West, etc. So it's a long issue to go about that, but yes, I agree that maybe at one point in time, a typical park doesn't work, and that is one of the maybe conclusions of the book. A public space as design space, as Dr. Telvizian said also. So yes, in the book you will find that I document, with available resources, which are mainly in Arabic, I document the history of the park, and actually these are the same sources that the report of the competition, or the base for the competition in the early 90s, that relied on. But I didn't just copy from them, I just reread these resources and did my own research about this, and I also document the process of the competition. So you can refer into more details into this, but I can assure you that one thing that I say here is that there was no kind of, I don't want to say here, I don't want to be very populist and say they should have surveyed the needs of the people. Maybe they should have did, but at least they should have at least understood more the culture, the local culture. But no, it was just designed to be a beautiful park, to be functional according to a designer's view of a park. And maybe at one point in time, there was a perspective of the controlling authority, which is maybe here the municipality or somebody else, to be designed maybe in a certain way and then to be closed. So then this would take us to the conclusion that the park was closed before it was opened in that sense. So, yeah, it was programmed to be closed. So it was closed in the heads of those who designed it, and not the designers only, but also the authority, before it was opened in 1999. So this is also another theory and to be tested. I think it's pretty much this. If you look into the book, into more details, you'll find people talking about how the park is isolated by roads, like what Mr. Sirov said, and how it is like one big space. Some people suggest, there was a course done at Alba Studio in landscape design. Some people suggested to break the park into pieces, into small parks. You'll find lots of these kind of interventions or reflections, and some people talk about whether the park is alone and the city is alone, or whether they are like one complete whole, etc. So I think I'll stop here and I'll give the floor to the panelists.
Since I've been identified as being very, very critical, I didn't get a chance because I read carefully all the single essays, and I have extensive notes on each of them, and I can speak out. For example, I like very much Salman's work on who are the park users and what is the economic cost of keeping a park going. This is a very interesting question. The cost provision, especially the inefficiency where 75% of the park is completely closed. Tara Mahfoud, her work on the excluding and the excluded is also very interesting. Rula Idris on the site of collective memory, where she identifies the three layers of the collective and the communal and the personal, and also the collective work of Nancy Hamad and Sarah Abu Ghazal, Hanan Akhal on the woman and public. I mean, all of these, there is material, but somehow the issues that you are asking, how do we convert this into a truly public sphere, goes back to the question I had posed earlier. I had one of my favorite friends was an architect who specialized in planning college campuses. He says he allows students first to use it, to use the places where they jog, they walk, where they cycle, where they gather, and then bottom down, and then he confirms those as the sites. This is difficult in Lebanon. If we allow the Lebanese to use, then we are going to go to the bubble. Hence, the veiled woman didn't go to the public sphere.
What's the problem? I mean, I think at its best, this Horsh would accept people as people are. I mean, it's not a place to tame people's behaviors.
But
right?
then why don't they go?
At its best.
I'll tell you one of the reasons. Because somebody asked, is the park relevant or not? Part of it lies in the conception of a park that is strictly pictorial, mzabbat, the Lebanese word you use. It's tidy and nice. Don't ruin it. Don't turn this. Don't turn this. These don'ts are bigger than the do's. And this is why I think that Horsh is an exceptional opportunity, because it is not a park. It is a kind of a landscape that is culturally aligned to what the Lebanese know and what they love in their mountains. So this is a very, very special landscape. It has to be designed as such. I am not sure that the design and the layout of it comes from another time, which is very much in the 60s, where it is pictorial. This is part of what is the problem.
But the problem, I mean, is more than that. I mean, look, the two central pieces, the Burj Square, the Central Business District. There was an international commission 8 years ago. The Garden of Forgiveness, there was an international commission. Both have been approved, and both are exceptionally, on paper, beautiful. Yet, why have they been stopped? If you ask, they tell you it's Saad Hariri and Berri. Berri doesn't want to abdicate the center to the Sunnis. And so far, Berri refused to get the army out of the Garden of Forgiveness. Says, keep it, where are we? So unless, George, we address these central issues of identity and collective memory and who the space is basically for. I mean, look, this is why Hariri was invented. Hariri was invented, and I have seen the documents, because they were afraid the Shiites would take over the center. This is basically the question of why the heart of Beirut is what it is today, because they're still close to Clemenceau. They were still close to the area.
I regret that the new member of the municipality, Mrs. Bushra Aitani, is not here. But I think it's a great thing to have her in the audience, right? I mean, I think if the book succeeded, it's partly to, they have somebody in the audience who comes and announces that they want to talk to you and other people, the NGO and other people. And she was listening to Nahnu, she was there listening, there is a group there, let's see what we can do with them. So I think in this it succeeds. Like if this advocacy is that fast to have people react and they come and they say, we would like to open it. Now the Sunni, Shia, Berri, Hariri thing, maybe this can overcome it, right? By the presence of certain members who are willing to discuss, not necessarily with scholars, again. I mean, of course, each has a role in here. So I think it was a great opportunity to have her, and maybe also your pressure can also be helpful, and I think it's great.
Well, Dr. Hamad is the professor at
Yes, he's an engineer who became now the mayor, the president of the municipality of Beirut. So let's have high hopes that something will happen now. It will trigger maybe things that are unexpected. But what better can it do than trigger things that are unexpected? I mean, this is the best thing that could happen to the Horsh.
If I can just add to George, look at the discourse that we have generated just here. I think part of what Fadi was trying to do in his book is to bring in those different speakers, and even if at a short, brief, I know that it is not in depth, but it is the collective. And it is the total that counts more than the individual contribution. I think that is important.
I would just want to add one last thing to what you were talking about right now, and to go back to what we do next. Actually, part of the book, and this is partly because of the funding regulations, and not only that, because this is also part, we mentioned that in the proposal, this is also part of what we pledged to do. The Heinrich Böll Foundation, the Heinrich Böll Foundation, they have a certain amount to distribute, and we have also a certain amount to distribute. The book is being sold, but at the same time, it's only being sold because as you know, such works, you know, what goes into them is more than what they get to you. So it's just to cover up some costs in that sense. But we have, so far, we have distributed about 170 books. Those are what I distributed personally, other than what the Heinrich Böll are distributing. And these are going to university libraries, public libraries, as-Sabil, ministries, the municipality, because we hope that maybe this document is a tool, as you said, to like make impact, to make people like remember again, there is this issue here. So advocacy is not just producing this book, but it's taking it to a next level. At this stage, it's about distributing it, making the message come to the people, and maybe at a later stage there will be something that's more related to action or to practice.
Thank you everybody for coming here, and thank you for our dear panelists. So we hope to see you again soon in our urbanism program. Thanks.